is Common Sense Radio. Straightforward and no excuses.
All right. Come on now.
This is the Steve Gruber Show.
Call me crazy.
Oh, yeah.
What I said was perfectly right and spot on accurate.
Boy's got a mouth like a cannon, always shooting it all.
Stop. Yeah, stop. I mean, you're way off script.
Got it in me. Gonna quit until it all comes out.
Hey, boy!
Been a long education.
Yeah, you know, it's not cynical. It's common sense.
Pay attention to me when I'm talking to you.
I'm gonna rock the nation. Rock the nation.
Genuine, accountable, and raw. Here is Steve Gruber.
It's Tuesday, and welcome to it. It's the Steve Gruber Show. Thank you for dialing it in. Appreciate your support. Another big show in front of you today here. You know, I don't know how we do it every day, but somehow we do. It's mostly the team here. John Lott will be here, the president of Crime Prevention Research Center, the man that wrote More Guns, Less Crime. He's here in town because he's meeting with Governor Snyder and others today to talk about how to reduce the chance of these mass shootings. I mean, they're here to talk about mass shootings and what can be done to reduce those possibilities. They're here to talk about gun-free zones. So John Lott will be here on the program today. Hipp will be here, the former Deputy Assistant Secretary of the U.S. Army. Megan Barth, founder of Reagan Baby. Shemaine Nugent, Ted's wife, is here with her brand new book. And Liz Peek from Fox News and so much more. By the way, if you want to go down to the football game, the big game in Ann Arbor this weekend, Saturday, the kickoff at 3:30. Tickets, if you can get them, well, they're not going to be inexpensive. I was on Ticket Hub last night. I saw an article online that said the average ticket now is $252. Well, I don't think you can buy one for $252. No, the cheapest ticket I found was about $300, and the most expensive was over $950. But you could buy a pair, so you could spend $1,900, and you and your buddy could watch the game. Or for $1,900, you could buy a brand new 60-inch super high definition television set and 2 great chairs, a case of beer, and sit home. Now you figure it out. Me personally, I'd probably help the economy. I'd probably buy that new TV, 2 nice chairs, a case of beer, and my buddy, we'd hang out at home. I'm just saying. All right, it's also the other big game, of course, is that it's debate. What is wrong with sitting home on Saturday and drinking a couple of beers and watching a football game? Why do I have to get I get it that it's 6 o'clock in the morning. It's reasonable. It's a reasonable thing to consider. Anyhow, moving on. Hillary Clinton facing heavy pressure as the first debate for the Democrats has finally arrived. They're only having like 4. And by the way, I just saw on the flat screen across the room, they have an extra podium sitting there in Las Vegas. They have an extra podium in Las Vegas just in case Joe Biden wants to jump into the race. You know, I thought he would be in by now. So now I'm starting to wonder if he's getting in at all. His last best move is to make an announcement at about 4 o'clock this afternoon that he is in the race and steal all of the thunder from the debate. He would suck all the air right out of the room. But Clinton facing heavy pressure for this debate tonight. Biden still mulling that bid, not expected to be on stage in Vegas, but like I said, the podium is there. But he'll surely be watching as the former Secretary of State spars in person for the first time with her 2016 Democratic opponents. In fact, they'll all be there, ones that you didn't even realize were running. People like Lincoln Chafee of Rhode Island, Jim Webb of Virginia. Jim Webb's actually a pretty decent candidate as far as Democrats go. He supports your gun rights, and he's for a strong military. He's not. He's a far better option than say, the former Secretary of State, in my estimation. Also, Martin O'Malley will be there, the former governor, and of course, your favorite, Bernie Sanders, will be on the stage. The big question for Clinton and everybody else is whether she can shake that image of somebody who's having a difficult year, whose campaign is in a flat spin, and if the draft Biden people can push through, if she can do that and show she is not vulnerable after all. She must come out with energy and warmth, is what the campaign advisors are saying. Energy and warmth. Now, that's really not her strong suit. We've talked about this lots of times. She is not a warm, friendly, and engaging candidate. She's just not. This is not somebody most people want to hang out with. And they might say that they're, excuse me, even listen to Bill Maher. Bill Maher, who says, I'm ready for Clinton, but I don't want to hang out with her. And why would you want to hang out with her? This is not somebody nobody you have any interest in whatsoever. But it is a chance for these others, Sanders, O'Malley, and Webb, and Lincoln Chafee to jump up and say, hey, we're here too. Biden still remains the biggest threat of all, though. We'll keep an eye on that. We will keep an eye on that. Closer to home, and I don't know what I expect from tonight. It's not going to get nearly the kind of attention that the Republicans have gotten so far this year during debates. Donald Trump says it's because he's not there. He's right. Nobody's going to watch this debate, and nowhere near the numbers that watch the Republican get-togethers. 25 million. They'll be lucky if they get half. They'll be lucky if they get half that number. Closer to home in politics, and I told you about John Lott coming to town to discuss gun issues. This will be discussed too, I am sure. But a bill that would trade open carry weapons for concealed weapons in areas like schools and daycare centers is up for a hearing in the Senate Judiciary Committee this week. Right now in Michigan, concealed pistol license holders can openly carry weapons in areas that are off limits to concealed weapons like schools and daycare centers, sports arenas, and bars. Senator Mike Green of Mayville introduced legislation that's essentially a trade. It takes away open carry in those areas, but allows those with concealed pistol licenses, CPL holders, to get an endorsement that allows them to carry there. It is a particularly sensitive issue in schools where shootings nationally have put parents on edge. Senator Green says he has spoken with Senate Majority Leader Arlen Meekoff about this, about what to do and how to come up with a fix, and this is their solution. There's a lot of school superintendents that have come to him and me, both asking us for a solution, because the solution that the other party has is not a solution, says Green. They want to go after the big picture and let's just eliminate all guns everywhere. We don't see that as a solution. State Rep Andy Shore of Lansing, a Democrat, has introduced legislation which would ban open carry in these zones and add public libraries to the list, but not change current state law banning concealed weapons. However, Shore told M Live in July that he couldn't get any traction for his bill. No kidding, Andy. Come on. It's not going anywhere. Green has described his bill as a peace pipe designed to ease tensions between gun rights groups and school officials, but he acknowledges that it has ruffled some feathers, particularly groups like Michigan Open Carry. Michigan Open Carry on its website warns members against the bill, labeling it a dangerous, sloppy mess. But Green's bill does have a supporter in Senator Rick Jones, who appears regularly on this program. My constituents are very upset about open carry in schools, and when I talk to them about the switching open carry to concealed, they like the idea. And we'll talk about it going forward here and much more. It's Tuesday, my friends. You're listening to The Steve Gruber Show. We'll be right back.
Genuine Michigan common sense on display every day.
All righty, welcome back to it here on this Tuesday. Hey, if you want to join the conversation, 888-900-9966, 888-900-9966. And get on board with that. And you can also go to stevegruber.com, find out so much more. You can click the Listen Live button there. You can find the podcast from interviews from yesterday, last week, a month ago, or 5 months ago for that matter. If you want to go back and listen to some of the presidential candidates like Ben Carson, who's in the news today, we'll get to in a moment, go to the Steve Gruber Show page, stevegruber.com. Check it out. And on Facebook, we're taking predictions for the Michigan State game. I'm not sure what I'm going to give away, but the Michigan State game. Pick your winner. Give me a score. I'll at least have you on the radio come next Monday, so do that on the Facebook page. Steve Gruber Show, the Steve Gruber Show Facebook page. Give me your score, give me the prediction. We were just talking about weapons here on the program. So next, the Supreme Court could hear a case on assault weapons. And an assault weapons ban, the Supreme Court of the United States could soon announce it will be hearing a case challenging an assault weapons ban altogether. This is, in my estimation, a dangerous road to go down, but so it is. Such a case could hold major ramifications for the future of such bans across the nation. Gun rights advocates are challenging a 2013 law passed in Highland Park, Illinois, that bans the sale, purchase, or possession of semi-automatic weapons that can hold more than 10 rounds in a single ammunition clip or magazine. One of the most famous guns of all time, sporting gun, fun gun, if you will, is a Ruger 1022. 22 caliber rifle, a Ruger 1022. First of all, because it never jams. And they come from, they're just, it's a wonderful piece of equipment, time tested and true. It comes from the factory with these little block clips that hold 10 rounds, right? You've probably shot a 1022. Most people that have ever been around guns know what a 1022 is. They also come with banana clips that'll hold 25 or 50. And if you're able, you can find a drum clip that holds like 100. They don't do as well, though. They tend to jam. The 10-shot clips from the factory never jam. That's why the 1022 is so good. But anyhow, in passing the law, city officials said that there were no more use of clips or magazines that would hold more than 10 rounds. They cited the 2012 shootings at Sandy Hook Elementary School in Connecticut and a movie theater in Aurora, Colorado as well. The ban also listed certain specific rifles, including those resembling AR-15s and AK-47 assault-style rifles. It wanted to specifically ban rifles based on the way they appear. Which has nothing to do, by the way, with how they function. Now, the case, if heard by the High Court, will center around whether or not such, quote, assault weapons can be legally deemed dangerous and unusual weapons, as advocates of the local gun ban hold such weapons are often used in mass shootings. Now, opponents of the ban argue that weapons such as the AR-15 are hardly unusual. The Illinois State Rifle Association, which is challenging the law's constitutionality, says the weapons are in no way unusual. The AR-15, the group points out, is the best-selling rifle of its type in the nation. And in fact, between 1990 and 2012, more than 5 million AR-type rifles were manufactured for sale in the United States. Another 3.5 million were imported. That's 8.5 million ARs. And that was until 2012. There are significantly more today. There are a lot more today than there were then. My concern, of course, is it goes to the Supreme Court and the court does not rule in favor of gun rights. If they rule in favor of banning weapons, then there's real trouble coming your way. Republican presidential candidate Ben Carson used a campaign stop in Georgia to accuse politicians of using poverty to bolster their voting constituencies. Now, here's Ben Carson once again out there saying, well, the truth. Telling the truth and catching heat for it. I have said this my entire life. Welfare programs have little to do with helping people and a whole lot about helping politicians to get elected and reelected and reelected and reelected. Here's what Dr. Ben Carson said. False compassion is patting them on the head and saying, you can't take care of yourself, and I'm going to give you food stamps, a housing subsidy, free health care, and all of the things you need so you can stay dependent and vote for me. All of the things you need so you can stay dependent and vote for me. His criticism of welfare is not new. It is deadly accurate, in fact. Carson also said that welfare makes people dependent on government. No kidding. Hey, let's stop just for a moment here and check out what we have on the hotline. We have Steve on the hotline. Welcome to the program.
Good morning. As far as the Supreme Court goes, it could go any way possible because they've already thrown the Constitution out the window, and the American public seems to be comfortable with it.
Well, they haven't on guns, though,
Steve. They don't understand what they're giving up, and it's the real deal and serious business.
It is serious business. The truth of the matter is, though, the court has ruled consistently in favor of gun rights in D.C. versus Heller and in the Chicago case. You have two cases recently where the Supreme Court ruled in favor of gun ownership and the individual right to keep weapons. So that's why I think it's a dangerous road to go down, but here we are.
Yes, but any gun that you take, you can turn into an assault weapon, like you verbally demonstrated with the 1022. I own a stainless steel version of it.
It's a beautiful gun, isn't it?
Yeah, and it's, with their language, they're going to achieve, or they're going to try to achieve, to turn anything. Does that mean that my M1A, which is the civilian version of the M14, if I hold it to a 5-shot clip, it's not an assault rifle?
That's right, but if it has a 15-shot clip, it is. You got it. It's crazy. Steve, thanks for checking in.
Thank you.
All right, it is Tuesday here on the program. We'll take your calls, 888-900-9966, 888-900-9966. You can also check us out on Facebook, The Steve Gruber Show, and, of course, SteveGruber.com. We'll be right back.
The Steve Gruber Show. American values with Midwestern common sense.
33 after the hour on this Tuesday. The combat patch worn by United States soldiers serving in the Middle East on the mission against the Islamic State, drawing flack from service and veterans who say the patch, which includes a palm wreath, stars, and crossed scimitars, which are swords, I must say Islamic-looking swords, with this green background. Critics say it looks like something the enemy would wear. In fact, it looks to the patch that is worn by the Muslim Brotherhood. I mean, very similar. The patch isn't new, and not real new. It came out in April. But this is just odd. Maybe the president should have worn the patch when he was out on 60 Minutes, saying that Putin's not leading and Putin's not winning. I'm leading the charge against Iran and global warming. Yeah, and unfortunately, that's what he really thinks. Our next guest, Van Hipp, former Deputy Assistant Secretary of the U.S. Army and the former Principal Deputy General Counsel of the U.S. Navy. Van Hipp, welcome back to the program.
Steve, good to be with you.
So, all right. I watched the 60 Minutes interview where Barack Obama said, I'm leading the world on climate change. And I'm thinking, he just really doesn't get it. He doesn't get the fact that Putin is driving right into Syria with arms and parking his ships and using air, land, and sea to move into the Middle East because there is no leadership from the United States, and the United States, frankly, cannot be trusted by those folks at this point. What do you make of it?
Well, this is what happens when you have no foreign policy. And the majority of the American people are seeing that. The whole entire world is seeing that. And what Putin is seeing, that he's got 15 or 16 months to basically have a green light and a blank check to do whatever he wants to, because he knows that this president's word doesn't mean anything. He has sent all the wrong messages, Obama has, to a thug like Putin. And Putin, all he understands is strength and always shown his weakness.
Yeah, and there is no strength being portrayed by the United States. So I guess, Barack Obama's position that he's leading on global warming, that's not working, Van? I mean, what's wrong? I mean, he's right out there.
Yeah, well, let me tell you.
Stopping climate change. He's got a windmill in one hand and, oh, good God.
Yeah, I don't know what planet he's on, but back to the Putin thing. I mean, the seriousness of what this guy's doing. On one hand, he's talking a big game at the United Nations. He wants to take the fight to ISIS. I don't know if you saw what happened last Wednesday. The FBI revealed that they thwarted a plot in Moldova where an outfit with strong ties to the FSB, that's the new KGB, that's the successor to the Russian intelligence service, they were caught trying to sell radioactive materials, nuclear materials, to ISIS. So again, Putin, I mean, that should tell you all you need to know. And they were caught on the wiretaps, Steve, saying, this is a good thing because it's likely the Islamists will try to use this to bomb America. That should tell you all you need to know about Putin. It's all about protecting that investment of Assad in Syria, and it's about trying to reconstitute the old Soviet Union.
Yeah, so, okay. And so we agree that Putin is taking up position in the Middle East because Well, there is no leadership in the United States there currently. So, what do we do for the next 16 months? Okay, Putin's going to have this leg up for the next 16 months. It's possible that Hillary Clinton could become the next president. I don't think it's likely, but it's possible. And she could expand on her own failed policies with her reset button and other, nonsensical little, gags or skits or whatever the hell that was. What do we have to do to turn this around?
Well, unfortunately, we got to have a commander-in-chief. I don't see one for another 16 months. It would be if we had a president who would get on a plane, go to Brussels, go to NATO. And remember last year, if you go back a year and a half ago, Obama went to NATO, this is very important, and said the country of Georgia, you're no longer presently on a pathway to NATO membership. We have supported Georgia's application for NATO membership since 2005, Steve. When he did that, that just told Putin, my gosh, I can do whatever I wanted. I would reverse that. I would increase the size of the U.S. Army. Right now we're at pre-World War II levels. Then I would go to Hungary. I would go to Poland. I would go to the Czech Republic, and so you're going to get the latest version of missile defense. And, oh, by the way, King Abdullah of Jordan, I'm going to give you everything you need to take the fight to radical Islam. And, by the way, Kurdish Peshmerga, I'm going to give you everything you need. That would show strength. That's what we need to do.
Yeah, the Jordanians actually have worked pretty well with us. After their pilot was burned alive. Yeah. It was if people don't remember, it was the pilot that was in the cage and burned alive by these creeps. That they turned around and pounded on them for a while, and I think they've shown some resolve to work with us. And I agree with you. We should work as closely as we can with those that are willing to be on our team.
That's right. And I got to tell you, I've known King Abdullah over 20 years ago when he commanded the Jordanian Special Forces. And here's an interesting point. He's a direct descendant of Muhammad. What better person, a reformed Muslim who's descendant from Muhammad, give that character everything he wants? He came to our Congress a few months ago complaining that our State Department was putting up all sorts of roadblocks, bureaucratic roadblocks in his path. Give him everything he needs.
Yeah, it's disheartening though. You mentioned again that we're at the pre-World War II levels in some ways, pre-World War I in other ways actually for our military and defense.
That's right.
And I look at the state of things today, and I see that the money for the military, if it goes away, it's going to be hard to bring it back because there are so many entitlements now. That how are you going to pay for the military? Because Obama has gutted the military while running our national debt to almost $19 trillion. How would you ever? Yeah. How would you ever? Be able to come back financially?
Yeah. Let me put this in historic terms so people understand. This is going to really get you. 52% of all federal spending in 1960 was for national security. Today it's roughly like 22%. We have cut, and national security as a percentage of federal spending has actually declined significantly in the last 50, 60 years.
It absolutely has. In 1950, it accounted for 50% of our budget.
Did you see what happened with China? China now is saying they want to support Russia in Syria. So the Chinese and the Russian bear are getting in bed together, as if we don't need more problems.
Well, yeah, that won't last too long, I don't think, because they won't get along very long. We should make the point. In 1950, 50% of our federal budget was spent on national defense, and about 20% or just under 19% was spent on entitlements. Today, more than 60% of our federal budget is spent on entitlements and giveaway programs, and about 20% or just under 19% is now spent on the U.S. military. So this nonsense that you hear from the left about how all this money is spent on the military, we spend more than we ever have, yeah. But in real dollars and as a percentage of our gross national product, not even close. Not even close do we, spend that kind of money that we did in 1950.
And Steve, why do we have
people just don't get it?
The reason the states came together was to provide for the common defense. That's first and foremost the reason for having a federal government.
Well, that's exactly right. Well, Van, I greatly appreciate your time, and I'm sure, unfortunately, we've got a lot to talk about over the next, in the foreseeable future, that's for sure. Thank you for the time.
Thank you, sir.
Van Hipp, the former Deputy Assistant Secretary of the U.S. Army and General Counsel of the U.S. Navy, he knows his way around a back room at the Pentagon, that's for sure. And he's a regular guest right here on the Steve Gruber Show. It's Tuesday. If you'd like to chime in, 888-900-9966. We'll be right back.
delivering Michigan common sense with a big dose of truth and honesty.
You know, you may have heard over time that, violent crime has gone down pretty much every year since I was born. Violent crime in America has been declining for 4 or 5 decades. The peak in homicides in America happened in 1973, 1974. It had another resurgence in the early 90s when Bill Clinton was president. But overall, violent crime, homicides, homicides were at almost 45,000 back in the 1970s, almost 45,000. And now homicides in America are back almost half of that. Almost half of that, yeah. It's incredible. Gun crimes, despite the fact that there are more guns and more people today in America than there have ever been, crime continues to decline. In fact, America wouldn't even make the top 60% of violent nations. You would think that America is just a bloody, nasty, violent place. Really, it's not. But the fact of the matter is it could be a safer place yet, except for, well, certain programs that, seem to reward criminal activity. Luke Adler, our next guest, a retired U.S. Marshal, joining us here on the program. Luke, welcome aboard.
Hey, Steve, thanks for having me. It's good to be with you.
Good to be here. I want to talk to you about the Violence Reduction Network for a moment here. The Violence Reduction Network, and as you as a former member of the FBI Joint Task Force on Terrorism, what is this Violence Reduction Network brought to us by the Department of Justice?
Well, that's a good question. That's a perfect question. I took a look at it and thought, what the heck is this? And you see this government newspeak that they talk about.
Newspeak, that's what they call it.
I guess it's the government's effort to come in and stop violent crime. So when you hear it, you think, well, Violence Reduction Network, that sounds okay, I guess. What exactly is it that they mean?
Yeah, it sounds promising, but what does it mean, and what have they done? I mean, here's the fact. Until we had the police back off after Baltimore this year, violent crime in America, as I mentioned, has been on the decline for 4 decades, and that happens to coincide with a great increase in the number of Americans that hold guns, that have concealed weapons permits across all states now. Michigan joining those ranks years ago, and violent crime in Michigan has declined as well. But you look at Chicago this year, and Baltimore, and Pittsburgh, and Cleveland, where the police have kind of backed off, and violent crime has spiked. Chicago's a war zone. Baltimore has turned back into a war zone, with people being killed every day. And so where is our Violence Reduction Network in these places?
Well, that's exactly right. Those are the inaugural cities that you're talking about, and they're also the bastions of left-leaning socialist policies for the past 60 years. Those are the things that churn that out. So basically what you're talking about, this administration, I mean, I don't believe that they're really doing anything other than they're churning money again, circular. And they pump money into these places, and then it gets pumped back into the DNC or to liberal policies and liberal things. Until, he's running hug-a-thug competitions out there and letting bad guys go outside the back doors of the prisons, and they're not locking the bad guys up on the front doors anymore. So, of course, violence crime is going to spike, especially in these places that you're talking about.
Makes me wonder, Luke, you're a U.S. Marshal. You've worked, on a lot of criminal activity, from here to Mexico and beyond. If we backed up, and so I'm going to ask one thing about policy changes that are happening here in Michigan and seem to be happening across the country, which is people seem less concerned about marijuana and drug crimes as they have been in years past. And we have prisons that are, bulging at the seams, and a lot of those folks are in there for marijuana and drug crimes. If we reduced the penalties for some of those crimes and focused back and gave serious focus on violent crimes and gangs and drugs, hardcore drugs and so forth, would we be better off that way? I mean, getting hard on direct on crime with this violent crime and forgetting about the dope smokers.
Well, I think that would probably be a good place to start, especially with the marijuana. However, you've got to look at these organized criminal organizations inside some of these bastions of left-leaning politics. Again, Detroit, places like that. Guys will shoot you for a $5 bag of weed.
Yeah,
you know what I mean? Because they're in competition
so that's why I say,
and they're out running and gunning, banging, popping caps on each other. And if you look at it, typically those places, it's a very small geographical area within those cities that we're talking about. My experience here in the city of St. Louis, we're always way up in the top probably 3 to 5 in the nation in terms of murders. But
not your neighborhood.
Happens, it typically happens in a small geographical area. But then with these left-leaning policies and spreading these bandits out, the bandits are becoming more mobile, and so now they're engulfing greater area, land mass.
Right, but even so, if you here's the thing, and I've known this for a very long time, statistically speaking, if you took and focused on a handful of counties in America, and if you took those counties out of the crime stats, there is no crime in America.
Right,
really. America's a very, very crime-free place when it comes to violence. You know, to listen to the news, you would think that America is the Wild West and bloody and deadly, and people are killing each other all over. It's not even close to the truth. America, like I said, doesn't even make the top 60% as far as violent countries in the world go. And many of those countries are the places with the strictest laws and the strictest gun control policies. In fact, pretty much every one of them. America's a pretty safe place because people that eat well and have nice houses and have cars and opportunity don't tend to be that mad all the time, right?
But
absolutely. You've got these few counties
that stick out. In some of these places that we're talking about, most of the people that live in those regions know, hey, those are bad areas, don't go inside those areas. That's where the Mogadishu rules exist, basically. And there's a breakdown, and these inner-city governments don't do anything about that. And these guys...
exactly.
And now, anytime something happens, this administration turns to the people and says, hey, you got to give up your guns. We don't trust you. There are too many guns out there. On the same
well, here's the thing.
They don't have...
Luke, let me give you this comparison before we run. They've got the Violence Reduction Network going to work for us here in the United States. That's like having the debate on CNN tonight with the Democrats called the Ignorance Reduction Network. It's not going to work. Luke, I appreciate you stopping in, and we're going to have to talk about this more in the future because there's a lot more to cover here.
Absolutely, Steve. Thanks for having me.
There you have it. Luke Adler, everybody, retired U.S. Marshal, saying, these left-wing policies, violence reduction networks, and other little hug-your-neighbor ideas, just not getting it done. I'm really shocked, aren't you? It's the Steve Gruber Show.